It's fascinating, isn't it? Something as, well, integral to life, something that can bring so much joy is still often whispered about, riddled with awkwardness, and frankly, a lot of flat out wrong information.
It really is. It makes you
Yeah.
wonder why.
Yeah. And that lack of reliable, accessible knowledge, it can really shape how we see ourselves and, how we connect with others.
Definitely, which is why this source is so important.
Exactly. Which brings us to why we're diving into such an important resource today. We're taking a deep dive into the Good Vibrations Guide to Sex, the most complete sex manual ever written.
Truly a landmark text.
Yeah.
It emerged back in 1994 from the experiences of the people working at a women-run vibrator store.
Right.
They basically recognized a real void in available resources for comprehensive and, importantly, diverse sex information and decided, well, let's create it ourselves.
Amazing. And it's become such a trusted guide since then. I mean, we're talking about its use in health clinics, on college campuses.
Oh, yeah, and recommendations from sex therapists, medical professionals. It's been, like, really instrumental in helping so many people feel more informed and confident.
Totally. So our goal today really is to pull out the essential insights from this pretty extensive book.
Yeah, we want to empower you, the listener, to gain a deeper understanding of your own sexuality, maybe approach relationships with more assurance.
And discover that potential for, well, greater pleasure, all without feeling bogged down by complicated terms or, any sense of judgment.
That non-judgmental part is key.
And a core principle of the book, one that's worth highlighting right away, is its perspective on sex toys.
Ah, yes. They weren't viewed as some kind of, like, shameful fix for problems, right?
Not at all. More like tools for exploration and enjoyment.
Exactly. For everyone, no matter their background or what they're into.
That was a genuinely groundbreaking viewpoint at the time, wasn't
Right,
it?
absolutely. And it had a really positive ripple effect across the entire adult toy industry.
How so?
Well, by treating these products with the same respect as, say, any other consumer item, Good Vibrations built this incredible trust with their customers.
Mm.
And it really spurred manufacturers to, elevate the quality of their offerings. It pushed the whole industry forward.
Okay, so let's delve deeper into that foundation. The book really underscores how crucial it is to understand and accept your own body. Like, that's the bedrock for sexual well-being.
That's absolutely right. Self-acceptance, it's presented as just fundamental for any intimate connection, really, but especially the one you have with yourself.
Right.
The book even shares this really compelling story about a customer who, after years of never experiencing orgasm, finally did.
Wow.
Yeah, with the help of a vibrator and some guidance from the store staff. And she described it as like unlocking this vital sexual energy that positively impacted every aspect of her life.
That really shows the power, doesn't it? The connection between accepting yourself and your sexual vitality. The guide also tackles the widespread issue of negative body image and how significantly that can affect your sex life.
It does. It acknowledges the constant, bombardment we get from often unrealistic, highly sexualized media images.
Mm-hmm.
But it also includes this really insightful observation from a survey participant, someone who realized that, with maturity came this sense of liberation,
Liberation, how?
understanding that their body didn't need to be perfect, that it's who they are inside that truly matters, accepting the whole package, basically.
I love that. And it really connects with this idea of genital awareness, something the book points out we're often not encouraged to cultivate, especially for women.
Precisely. The book draws this stark contrast, right, between how often penises are openly depicted in art and history
Yeah, everywhere.
and the relative, like, obscurity or lack of diverse representations of vulvas. This lack of exposure can really contribute to feelings of shame or this idea that your own genitals are somehow not right.
And the book shares a really impactful story about that, doesn't it?
It does. Someone who, through reading the book Femelia and also having the support of a loving partner, finally came to see their own plump, full-lipped vulva as completely normal and beautiful.
Wow. Shattering years of negativity.
Exactly. It just shows the power of positive affirmation and, well, seeing yourself reflected
It
positively.
really does. And building on that foundation of self-acceptance, the guide moves into the essential role of communication for better sex.
Yes. It really encourages you to be what they call a vocal lover.
A vocal lover, I like that. What does that mean exactly?
Well, it emphasizes giving specific compliments, not just general praise like, that was nice.
Right, like what was nice.
Exactly. And it contrasts the, like, long-lasting negative impact of a critical comment from a first sexual partner.
Oof. Yeah, that can stick with you.
with the profoundly positive influence of an enthusiastic second partner. It's a powerful reminder of how much our partner's reactions can shape our sexual self-esteem, for better or worse.
Absolutely. And speaking of our bodies, the book provides detailed but still really accessible descriptions of both female and male genitals. Let's start with the clitoris.
Okay, so the book highlights it as the most sensitive area in the entire pubic region, often kind of nestled under the clitoral hood.
Mm-hmm.
And what's fascinating, and maybe surprising to some, is how directly it draws a comparison to a miniature penis.
Right. Understanding that anatomical connection for you, the listener, can really shift how you think about pleasure and sensitivity.
Totally. The entire clitoris that includes the glands, the hood, the shaft, and the underlying crura, the legs, it's all composed of erectile tissue, just like the penis.
So it gets engorged during arousal.
Exactly. All these parts become engorged and firm. And importantly, the book clarifies how stimulating other areas like the urethra, the vagina, even the anus can indirectly stimulate the clitoris as well.
Because it's all connected underneath.
Precisely. Those clitoral legs extend down beneath the labia. It's a whole network.
Which makes perfect sense when you think about it. And the book even includes that humorous aside about someone being blown away by G-spot stimulation.
Yeah, like it's all part of this larger network of pleasure points.
Okay, now what about the vagina itself? What details does the guide offer?
Well, it clarifies that the vaginal opening isn't just like an open space. It's folds of skin that usually rest, companionably together.
Okay.
It emphasizes the vagina's remarkable ability to expand tank childbirth, but also notes its typical length is around 4 inches, curving back towards the cervix.
And sensitivity varies.
Big time. The outer third has a much higher concentration of nerve endings, so it's more responsive to touch, friction, vibration. The inner two-thirds, more sensitive to pressure.
Interesting distinction.
And during arousal, there's the tenting effect.
Yes. Explain that.
The uterus lifts up, and the inner part of the vagina balloons out, creating this space behind the cervix. Some women find pressure right there particularly pleasurable.
That level of anatomical detail, but explained so clearly, not like a textbook. That's incredibly valuable. It really empowers you to understand your own body.
Absolutely. And the book gives male genital anatomy the same clear treatment.
Right, like explaining the prostate.
Yes, it explains how to locate and massage the prostate, basically, inserting a finger into the rectum and gently stroking towards the front of the body.
Describes it as, what, walnut-sized?
Roughly, yeah, though maybe larger in men over 40. And
Yeah.
it points out that reaching it yourself can be a bit tricky.
So partners or toys can be helpful there.
Potentially, yeah. And similar to the G-spot, prostate stimulation is often more pleasurable when someone's already aroused. Responses can range from intense pleasure to, for some, feeling like they need to pee.
Good to know the range. And what about erections, another area often surrounded by anxiety and misinformation?
Definitely. The guide differentiates between physical and psychological factors that can cause erectile difficulties. It mentions things like nocturnal erections, erections during sleep, and the old postage stamp test as simple ways to help figure out the cause.
So if erections happen during sleep,
It suggests the issue is more likely psychological, maybe linked to stress, performance anxiety, or even just a lack of genuine desire in that specific situation.
right.
The book even shares a relatable anecdote about the stress of a divorce contributing to ED, which then unfortunately became this self-fulfilling prophecy.
Oh, that cycle.
Yeah, until the individual took time for self-reflection and relaxation. So the key takeaway for you, the listener, is recognizing how deeply the mind and body are intertwined in sexual response.
That really highlights the interplay, doesn't it, between our mental state and physical responses? The book also briefly touches on the standard phases of sexual response.
Yeah, briefly outlining the plateau phase, noting things like clitoral retraction in women, vaginal congestion, maybe pre-cum in men. Then it describes orgasm as that release of built-up sexual tension through involuntary muscle contractions in the pelvic region, usually a series of rhythmic contractions. It also mentions how orgasm helps release blood from the engorged tissues.
But the book doesn't just stop at the purely physical, does it? It offers a really important critique of a purely mechanical view of sex.
Exactly. While acknowledging contributions from figures like Masters and Johnson, the guide really emphasizes that sexual response isn't just about hitting the right physiological buttons.
It's more holistic.
Totally. It stresses the crucial role of subjective experiences, social factors, psychological readiness. Just because someone is physically aroused doesn't automatically mean they desire sex or will find it pleasurable. Genuine desire is essential.
And our hormones play a really significant role in all of this too, don't they?
Oh, they certainly do. The book briefly explains the effects of estrogen, promoting blood flow, lubrication, general well-being, sensitivity,
And progesterone.
discusses some of its counteracting effects, like immune suppression, maybe a more sedating effect. The guide includes personal accounts illustrating how desire can fluctuate
Fluctuate with what?
with the seasons, your mood, major hormonal shifts like during pregnancy or menopause. It's all connected.
It's so important to acknowledge those hormonal influences. The book also touches on transgender and intersex considerations, right?
Yes, briefly, mentioning that genital surgery is often more common and sometimes less complex for male to female transitions compared to female to male. It cites penile inversion surgery as an example.
And intersexuality.
It just introduces the concept, highlighting that biological sex exists on a spectrum. Some individuals are born with characteristics that don't fit neatly into typical binary notions of male or female.
Great to include that perspective. And for men, the idea of experiencing multiple orgasms is often a topic of interest.
Definitely. The book presents two main schools of thought on achieving male multiple orgasms. Both center around developing awareness and control of the PC muscle, the pubococcygeus muscle.
Okay, so how does that work?
Well, basically one method involves consciously contracting that muscle just before ejaculation to prevent it. The other approach teaches men to build arousal to orgasm and then use the PC muscle to have the orgasm without actually ejaculating.
Fascinating control.
Yeah, and there's even a personal story about someone achieving hands-free orgasms purely through the power of fantasy.
Which just underscores how powerful our minds are in all this.
Absolutely.
And speaking of the mind, the book shares that incredible experience from an individual who is paraplegic.
Yes, someone with no feeling below the waist, but who can still experience lubrication and even orgasm through focused thought and concentration.
Wow, that just highlights the brain's crucial and maybe underestimated role in our sexual experience.
It's a powerful reminder. Sex is so much more than just the physical.
Definitely. And the book offers a really interesting perspective on the big O itself, doesn't it?
It does. It reframes orgasm, saying it's not the only goal of sex,
Right.
but rather it's a revealing topic. It reflects our broader feelings about our sexuality, our body, relationships, desires.
It's like a window into.
Exactly. It encourages you to take some time for self-reflection on your own feelings and beliefs about orgasm. What does it mean to you?
That's a really insightful way to put it. Not just the sensation, but the meaning. Okay, shifting gears slightly, the book also offers some very practical advice, like talking to healthcare providers.
Absolutely. It encourages asking those potentially embarrassing questions. Reminds you that your doctor should be a trusted resource.
And if that direct conversation feels too hard,
It points to anonymous resources too, like sex information hotlines or reputable websites. There are options.
good. And it's not just about adult sexuality. The guide dedicates significant space to youth sexuality, which is so important given that statistic we mentioned at the start.
All right, so many teens are sexually active but get very little accurate info. The book references CDC stats and expresses real concern that sex-positive, accurate messages often arrive way too late.
Does it recommend specific resources for young people?
It does. Books like Deal With It and Changing Bodies, Changing Lives, plus valuable websites like Sex, Etc., and the Coalition for Positive Sexuality.
And it includes actual teen voices, too, right? The Teens Sexual Bill of Rights.
Yes, excerpts from surveys where young people share their first sexual experiences. And these accounts just underscore the urgent need for better sex ed that actually meets their needs.
What kind of issues come up?
Things like a basic lack of knowledge, painful experiences because nobody mentioned lube, but also the often overlooked fact that there are tons of fun, fulfilling sexual activities besides just intercourse.
Right. The book strongly encourages viewing intercourse as just one option among many.
Exactly. A much healthier perspective.
And ultimately, the book speaks to the truly transformative power that comes with accepting your own sexuality.
It really does. Highlighting how embracing and celebrating your authentic sexual self can positively impact all areas of your life, fostering greater self-esteem, confidence, well-being. It shares inspiring anecdotes of personal growth stemming directly from that acceptance.
And that sexuality isn't static, right? It changes throughout life.
Totally. The book thoughtfully addresses sexuality across the entire lifespan.
How so?
It includes personal stories about how desire and experiences change with age, during parenting years, through menopause.
So it's not all downhill after 30.
None at all. Some people experience increased libido, more intense orgasms later in life. Others might shift away from a purely goal-oriented approach, focusing more on connection, intimacy, sensual enjoyment.
That's a really reassuring perspective. Our sexual lives evolve with us. The guide also specifically discusses sexuality and disability.
Yes, emphasizing the wide array of sexual expression among people with disabilities, and highlighting the importance of recognizing erogenous zones beyond just the genitals.
It shares an anecdote about that, I recall.
Yeah, about heightened sensitivity in other body areas after a spinal cord injury. Shows how the body can adapt and find new pathways to pleasure.
And for survivors of sexual trauma.
The book offers guidance and hope, mentioning resources like The Survivor's Guide to Sex and sharing a powerful story about reclaiming sexuality after trauma through self-awareness, acceptance, focusing on one's own pleasure. It underscores the possibility of finding pleasure and connection again.
It really paints this picture of evolving sexual self-esteem, people learning to enjoy sex later, overcoming negative pasts, integrating sexual and emotional feelings. Okay, let's shift focus now to communication, because the book stresses that even with knowledge, talking about sex openly is still hard.
It absolutely can be.
Yeah.
The book highlights this difficulty many face, despite, a strong underlying curiosity. It points to common barriers rooted in societal attitudes,
Right.
shame, fear of judgment.
All that baggage.
Exactly.
And with any new sexual partner, that safer sex conversation is crucial, right?
Essential. Absolutely essential. The guide strongly emphasizes proactively discussing safer sex practices openly, honestly, and before you're in the heat of the moment.
So what are some practical ways the book suggests we can improve our communication skills about sex?
It encourages being direct, but gently, using simple, clear words like softer, slower, harder to express what feels good to you.
Specificity?
Yes. And actively asking your partner for feedback, offering options during sex. There's a telling anecdote about a woman who really appreciated knowing she was doing it right. Positive feedback enhances pleasure for both people.
Overcoming embarrassment, though, that's a big hurdle. Any strategies?
Yeah, it suggests practical steps, like maybe writing down lists of desires first just to ease the awkwardness of saying them aloud, or even taking turns in a more structured way to discuss preferences and boundaries.
Structured turn-taking.
Yeah. The book shares stories of the joy people find discovering shared desires through these more intentional methods.
And what about tackling those really sensitive topics, like STIs or non-monogamy?
The guide acknowledges the challenges there, absolutely, as well as addressing things like low libido or conditions like vulvodynia. It just emphasizes the critical need for open, early communication, even though it feels uncomfortable or vulnerable.
It also brings up a really important point about differing definitions of sexual desire, doesn't it?
It does. How that can lead to misunderstandings. One person might equate desire mainly with wanting intercourse, while another defines it more broadly, any erotic feeling, intimacy.
So talking about what desire means to each of you is key.
Incredibly helpful, yeah. Avoids misinterpretations.
And our expectations about sex, where they come from, how realistic they are, they play a big role too.
Oh, huge. The book encourages you to question the origins of your expectations about frequency, what's normal, what sex should be like. Comparing ourselves to unrealistic media portrayals creates so much pressure.
And the fear of vulnerability in long-term relationships. It's almost a paradox, isn't it?
It really is. You'd think it gets easier, but sometimes it gets harder to be truly open about deep desires or fears. Fear of judgment, disappointment. That old sexual shame can creep back in, even with a partner you love deeply.
Wow. And ultimately, the book really stresses clarifying needs and desires. It uses that anecdote about Ellen and the vibrator as a cautionary tale.
That's such a clear example. Ellen's husband totally misinterpreted her interest in vibrators, got defensive, shut down her exploration.
When open communication could have made it positive for both.
Exactly. Which leads us nicely into another topic the book covers in detail: masturbation.
Yes, a topic thankfully becoming less taboo, and this guide definitely helped destigmatize it. It even references the American Medical Association declaring it normal and healthy way back in 1972.
Right. And the book goes further, really emphasizing masturbation as a fundamental basis for good sex.
How so?
It's the primary way for you to learn your own unique anatomy, discover exactly what types of touch feel best. Self-discovery.
It's really presented as vital self-discovery. The book mentions therapists actually prescribing it sometimes.
Yeah. To help people increase sexual awareness, overcome barriers, it can be particularly helpful for women who haven't experienced orgasm or men seeking more ejaculation control.
And it powerfully frames masturbation not just as normal, but as like an act of sexual freedom.
Totally. A way of asserting your sexual identity, actively rejecting repressive attitudes. It debunks those old myths,
Yeah.
blindness, disease,
Yeah, thankfully those are mostly gone.
mostly.
Yeah.
So it's about celebrating your own sexuality, even practicing safer sex by knowing your own responses first. The book even touches on historical perspectives.
Like the Bible.
Yeah, noting the lack of explicit condemnation, how the story of Onan is often interpreted differently. It highlights how cultural attitudes, not scripture, really shaped our views historically.
Interesting. The book also acknowledges the hang-ups people still have.
Oh yeah, lingering guilt, shame, concerns about cleanliness, fear of being caught. It points out these anxieties can sometimes even become part of someone's arousal pattern.
And it stresses positively reinforcing self-touch for kids.
Crucial, as a way to counteract negative or shame-based messages they might get from society.
So for someone looking to explore or enhance their masturbation practices, the book offers guidance.
Definitely. Encourages gentle body exploration, describes various methods women often enjoy: fingers, lube, toys, positions. It also talks about mutual masturbation.
With a partner.
Yeah, highlighting the intimacy, the openness, trust, and caring that requires.
And for giving a hand job.
Offers practical tips, positioning, lots of lube, and crucial communication, asking for feedback.
It really covers the spectrum, solo to partnered. And it even celebrates masturbation openly.
Yeah, mentioning things like the Masturbation Society and the idea of a masturbation day.
I love that. Just normalizing and celebrating something natural. The book also has those profiles and pleasure sections, right? Featuring pioneers.
Yes, like Betty Dodson, the grandmother of masturbation, discusses her influential workshops aimed at liberating masturbation, promoting body acceptance.
Mentions her split beaver for feminists presentations.
Yep, and her lyrical, celebratory descriptions of vulvas, emphasizing their diversity and beauty.
It's clear the guide sees masturbation as fundamental and positive. Okay, let's move to another topic the book is enthusiastic about: lubricants.
Yes, cannot overstate the importance of lube for comfort and pleasure. For so many activities, the book shares tons of endorsements from people calling lube genuinely life-changing.
Amazing how something simple makes such a difference. The book differentiates types, right? Let's start with oils.
Oils have a long history, but it advises caution with scented oils' potential irritation. Recommends pure, lightweight vegetable or mineral oils mainly for massage. Notes their popularity for male genital massage, hand jobs.
Okay, and then water-based lubes, probably the most common.
Discusses their wide availability, their initial medical formulation, acknowledges they can get tacky sometimes,
Right.
but points out that the focus on safer sex led to huge improvements in sensual water-based lubes. Mainstream companies make much sleeker, more pleasurable options now, marketed for enjoyment.
Good to know they've improved. And silicone-based.
Highlighted for being super slick, longer lasting than water-based,
Downsides.
tend to be pricier, need soap and water for cleanup, and crucially not compatible with silicone toys. They can degrade the toy.
Good tip. So a trade-off depending on needs. The book also delves into massage beyond just genitals.
Oh yeah, emphasizes the profound pleasure in gentle touch, kisses, licks all over the body. Not just the usual spots. Suggests a starting-ending stroke for full-body massage. Key principles:
Like what?
maintaining contact, symmetry in strokes, paying close attention to partners' reactions, verbal and nonverbal.
It also emphasizes non-sexual touch too, right? Like cuddling.
Yes, reminds us of that universal pleasure, that comfort. Draws a nice parallel to kids' natural inclination for physical affection, a fundamental human need.
It is. The book also covers oral sex in detail.
Highlighting its versatility, the fun option of flavored latex or lubes. Even encourages tasting, smelling your own secretions as a way to appreciate your body. Addresses the gag reflex.
Practical tips there.
Yeah, suggests focusing on breathing through your nose, just embracing exploration without shame. The book also clarifies the nature of sexual fluids.
Saying they're not inherently harmful.
Right. Semen, female ejaculate, vaginal secretions not harmful or dirty if partners are disease-free. Debunks myths, too, like getting pregnant from swallowing semen or its high-calorie content.
Good myth busting, and it tackles 69.
Yep. presents both sides. Enthusiastic views on mutual pleasure, but also critical ones from people who find it hard to concentrate on both giving and receiving simultaneously.
Shows how experiences vary. It even includes that unconventional anecdote with wine.
Yes. Pushes boundaries, highlights playful experimentation, and then rimming oral anal stimulation.
Acknowledged as highly charged for many.
Presents the contrasting views. Hygiene concerns versus the anus as another potential erogenous zone. Notes its sensitivity. Really encourages open-mindedness, clear communication, mutual agreement.
Okay. Now, shifting to a crucial aspect. Safer sex practices and the role of toys.
Absolutely essential info. Starts with barriers for oral sextile dams, their limits, practical alternatives like cut-open condoms or gloves, larger latex sheets, even mentions FDA testing saran wrap.
Really? Saran wrap?
Apparently. And for latex allergies, it introduces polyurethane condoms, thinner, odorless, though initially had higher breakage rates.
Good alternative, though. The book also profiles Nina Hartley here.
Yes, the feminist porn star and nurse, known for educational videos on oral anal sex, always emphasizing detailed anatomy and safe practices.
And for introducing toys to a hesitant partner.
Suggests focusing on enhanced pleasure, playful exploration, emphasizes communication, flexibility, compromise. Might take time and gentle encouragement.
Then it dives into playing with vibrators.
Highlighting they're not just for women. Men and women can enjoy them for vaginal, clitoral, penile, testicular, anal stimulation. Recommends experimenting with different models, intensities, patterns.
It also advises avoiding disappointment, right?
Yeah. Be mindful of quality. And crucially, always have fresh batteries. Practical stuff.
Always practical. It describes different types, like electric wands.
Yeah, powerful ones, often with attachments for targeted stimulation, like the Wonder Wand or G-spotter attachments.
And battery vibrators.
Huge variety in shapes, sizes, materials, generally gentler vibrations, good for a range of preferences, internal or external use.
Also discusses dildo-shaped vibrators, cock ring vibrator.
Yep, dildo vibes for dual stimulation. Cockring Vibes shares enthusiastic feedback on enhanced ejaculation pleasure, but also critical views on discomfort. Mentions their use with harnesses, too.
And where to buy them. Offers discreet options.
Recommends adult stores boutiques for advice and seeing products, but acknowledges reluctance. Suggests maybe asking for personal massagers in department stores as a less direct approach.
Includes that Funny Wrigley's slogan anecdote.
Yes. The Double Your Pleasure dispute. Shows evolving cultural perceptions. And finally, safer sex with vibrators.
Key guidelines.
Thorough cleaning between partners and orifices. Strongly recommends condoms on shared toys. Prevent transmission. The book even briefly touches on vaginal fisting.
Briefly.
Includes a user's anticipation and describes the gradual insertion process. And concludes this section arguing against overemphasizing penis-vagina intercourse, highlighting the value of outer course.
For preventing STIs, teen pregnancy, addressing pre-orgasmia.
Exactly. Promotes a broader, more inclusive understanding of sex and pleasure.
Okay, let's move into intercourse and penetration itself.
Again, stresses lube. Unless there's ample natural lubrication. Shares an anecdote about using extra lube even with condoms.
Addresses too much lube, too.
Yeah, suggests adjusting angles or using condoms for more friction if desired. Then describes common positions.
It's like woman on top.
Highlighting control, clitoral stimulation, the view, and rear entry, doggy style, notes, comfort, potential G-spot nipple clitoral stimulation, possibility using vibrators.
And for anal play intercourse. Crucial advice.
Absolute necessity of copious lube. Shares a positive experience of anal sex stimulating the clitoris, feeling more intimate. Emphasizes discussion, relaxation, communication, respecting boundaries. Counters the myth it has to hurt.
Revisits cock rings here, too.
Yeah, more enthusiastic user experiences, extended erection, enhanced pleasure, visual appeal. But again, notes the pressure sensation isn't for everyone. Discusses playing with dildos in partnered sex.
Techniques.
Squeezing, releasing for internal awareness, combining pelvic contractions with movement. Emphasizes comfort and control for the person being penetrated. Then covers dildo materials.
Vinyl rubber, jelly rubber, silicone.
Describes vinyl rubber, cost, appearance, cleaning, jelly rubber, softness but porosity concerns, and silicone, high quality, often pricier, used by imaginative cottage industries.
And choosing a dildo. Factors to consider.
Shape, colors, size, intended use solo versus partner, depth, harness use. Also introduces double dildos.
Explaining the concept.
Simultaneous penetration, but noting active coordinated participation is usually needed for desired motion. And then strap-ons and harnesses.
Used by
People of all orientations. For various reasons, penetration when erection is difficult, risk-free penetration, double penetration, highlights added variety, adventure, describes different harness styles,
Also touches on other anal toys.
fingers, vibrating plugs, beads, cautions about sharp seams on cheap plastic beads, porosity of rubber jelly materials, and concludes with Tristan Taormino profile.
The sex educator known for strongly advocating lubricant.
Exactly. Essential stuff.
Now let's explore fantasies, erotica, and online exploration as discussed in the guide.
The book immediately reassures you, the listener. Fantasizing is universal, healthy, shares diverse examples of group sex fantasies, other fun scenarios people imagine.
Highlights the power of erotic language, dirty talk.
Encourages exploring it, reading erotica to discover what language scenarios arouse you, tips on developing a sexual vocabulary, finding what resonates with you and a partner.
How can we incorporate fantasies into real-life sex? Suggestions.
Describing past encounters, movie scenes, narrating current activity. Emphasizes the arousal from knowing you're turning your partner on with words. Touches on exhibitionism, voyeurism, always with consent being key.
Absolutely. Describes group sex parties clubs as increasingly popular, often with safer sex rules, spaces for consensual expression.
And integrating a partner into fantasies.
Suggests substituting your partner into a familiar fantasy. Addresses potential anxieties about taboo fantasies, reassuring they're common, often just fantasies.
Right, doesn't mean you want someone else.
Exactly. Book advises managing fantasy life healthily, seeking help if disruptive, offers tips for stimulating imagination, then discusses erotica versus pornography.
Defining erotica smut as subjective. The key question, does it arouse you? Encourages non-judgmental attitude to personal turn-ons. Highlights books as erotic inspiration. Briefly notes historical expansion of erotica availability.
Photography as erotica, too.
Notes wide availability. Lesbian erotica, art history, fetish, historical. Then discusses videos pornography, how industry evolved, more diverse content, female pleasure focus, talented directors, performers.
Mentions instructional videos, amateur productions, advice for couples exploring porn together.
Addressing objections, finding shared interests, emphasizing enhancement, not comparison. Tips for shopping for videos, acknowledging potential intimidation in adult stores.
Finally, this section covers getting online for sexual exploration.
Explains basic requirements back then, computer, modem, ISP, describes websites, homepages, highlights the internet's power connecting people with shared niche interests, BDSM, polyamory, disability support, LGBTQ plus teens.
Online communities.
Huge. Discusses online erotica, reading, writing, fanfic, cyber sex, phone sex, abstracted mutual masturbation, online romance dating. Concludes with a reminder about privacy concerns.
Opened up a whole new world. Okay, let's move into SM and power play, which the guide addresses with nuance.
Introduces it by acknowledging enjoyment in both giving and receiving control. Explores the appeal of submission, feeling desired, release from responsibility, and dominance enjoyment of control possessing another consensually.
Frames SM not as negative, but as heightened awareness.
Explains how it reintroduces thrill, anticipation, taboos, power negotiation, boundaries. Combining seduction with security makes the point it can be safer sex.
How so?
Focus often on full-body exploration over intercourse fluid exchange. Mentions SM community advocacy for safe, sane, and consensual practices, discouraging excessive substance use.
Consent and safety paramount. Encourages exploring related fantasies.
Suggests specific role-play scenarios. Advises specific, non-threatening, non-judgmental language when discussing fantasies. Emphasizes naming desires as brave, deserves respect.
Touches on tools practices like restraints.
Shares personal anecdote about enjoying being tied up. Crucial safety tips. No constricting joint circulation, slip knots, caution with thin materials. Highlights benefits of purpose-built restraints, safety, comfort, aesthetics. Discusses spanking flagellation.
Explaining different implements.
Hands, belts, crops, paddles, whips, varying sensations, and nipple stimulation.
Enthusiastic accounts.
Yeah, people finding it incredibly intense, even orgasmic. Describes different nipple clamp types, features, sensations.
Again, safety and consent reiterated for power play.
Absolutely. Importance of communication, trust, safe words. Shares poignant anecdote about past trauma making certain dynamics being pinned down, unsexy, scary. Concludes on empowering potential of SM, blending communication, touch, fancy, sex pleasurably.
Now let's shift to the adult toy industry itself and safer sex accessories.
Offers insights into the global industry manufacturing locations. Some factories making novelties as a sideline. Critiques questionable claims, expensive medical devices for female sexual dysfunction, highlighting accessible, effective alternatives.
Addresses legal and social stigma, too.
Explains how obscenity laws lead manufacturers to market toys as novelties, emphasize fantasy, notes challenges for upscale businesses with zoning restrictions, then emphasizes importance of safer sex info.
Framing it not just as disease prevention, but integral to sexual health. Exciting even.
Yes, lists basic guidelines. Latex barriers, condoms, vaginal intercourse, shared toys, dental dams alternatives, oral sex, water-based lube with latex. Includes brief, fascinating history of condoms.
Intriguing facts, different materials throughout history. Guidance on choosing condoms.
Briefly mentions factors. Thickness, flavor, lubrication, discusses transmission risk levels for different activities.
Based on fluid exchange, skin contact, then shifts focus beyond prevention.
Those already living with STIs, their desire for continued sexual expression. Addresses negative impact of societal sex negativity on self-esteem after contracting an STD. Contrast this with reactions to other illnesses.
Important perspective. Empathy, not judgment. Finally, censorship and resources.
Introduces the ongoing societal urge to censor sexual expression. Mentions surprising number of places with laws against unmarried cohabitation, fornication, sodomy. Describes historical censorship trends.
From federal raids to focusing on protecting women and children. Mentions Pornography Victims Compensation Act, didn't pass. Targeting books library.
Shares disturbing anecdote of book seizures based on subjective obscenity, including surprising titles. Even Andrea Dworkin. Briefly presents argument against the child porn myth.
Criticizing conflation of adult-child content, arguing U.S. commercial production is largely myth, images often from overseas. Discusses local battles against adult businesses.
Shares positive outcome for good vibrations. Community support against zoning, but notes others less fortunate. Encourages critical thinking about zoning laws. Mentions the Good Vibrations survey and appendix respondents enjoyed reflecting on sex lives.
And finally, lists selected resources.
Examples of manuals, guides, books on gender trans issues, feminist perspectives, erotic anthologies, reminds readers of the index for specific topics.
Well, that was a truly comprehensive deep dive into the Good Vibrations Guide to Sex. It's so clear this book offers such a wealth of empowering information for understanding and ultimately enjoying our own sexuality positively.
It really does. And as we've talked about, it continuously comes back to those core themes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Self-acceptance, the absolutely vital importance of open, honest communication.
With ourselves and partners, yeah.
And the beautifully wide diversity of human sexual pleasure.
And we've really only just scratched the surface here. I mean, the sheer amount of information packed into this guide is incredible.
It really is.
So for you listening, we wholeheartedly encourage you to seek out the book itself or maybe delve deeper into any specific topics that particularly resonated with you today.
Absolutely. This is truly a resource that you can return to again and again as you continue to explore and navigate your own unique sexual journey throughout life.
Definitely. And for our final provocative thought, I want to pose a question directly to you, the listener. Based on our discussion today, particularly the experiences shared by teenagers and that consistent emphasis on informed consent and pleasure at all ages, what would your own personal sexual Bill of Rights be?
Ooh, interesting question.
Yeah, take some time to really reflect on your own boundaries, your deepest desires, and the kind of sexual experiences that you truly want to cultivate in your life.